Waiting for Godot as the drama of, as an existentialist play. I intend to look at the aspects of existentialism here and to assess those aspects of existentialism with reference to the theater of absurd, with reference to existence. I repeat the title once again that we are discussing today is existentialism and waiting for Godot, or you can say that we are trying to look at waiting for Godot as an existentialist play. Dear students, as you know that existentialism is a very prominent aspect of philosophy, and as a philosophy, existentialism as a sort of a revolt. And yes, existentialism is certainly a kind of a rebellion. It is a kind of a revolt. What kind of a rebellion it is and against what it rebel, we will be talking about this after a short while. But at this very outset, I would like to advise you that you should look at existentialism and its philosophy through a good source, whether internet or any printed material, from the books of or from the sources available on the philosophy of the philosophical thing. Because as I am saying, and I am repeating it time and again, that existentialism is basically a philosophy. It is, I believe, it is a philosophy that stands in complete contradiction with the philosophy of essentialism. Now, my dear students, by the word essentialism, I do not mean something which is necessary. My essentialism is not coming right now. The kind of essentialism which I am referring to is not coming from the word essential. Rather, it is coming from the word essence. I hope those who are able to understand philosophy, the fact that there was a philosophy of essence as propounded by the great philosopher Plato. There was a philosophy of the spirit. There was a philosophy of essence as propounded by the great philosopher Plato. Dear students, I personally look at this philosophy of existentialism as quite an opposite philosophy of the philosophy of essence. So I look at it as the philosophy. It is about the existence of man with a capital M. It asserts the relevance, it asserts the importance of man with a capital M. It is not about the philosophy of idealism. It is also not about the philosophy of essentialism, as I said earlier, the philosophy of essence. It is a philosophy that asserts the status and the position of man. So that is why, my dear friend, I was considering existentialism is actually a sort of a revolt. It is actually a sort of a rebellion against that philosophy of idealism and that philosophy of essence, in which the essence is more important, in which the ideals are more important in comparison to man. What I believe is that the concept of existentialism asserts the position of man. So, dear students, existentialism is a revolt against conventions. Look here and listen to me. Existentialism is a revolt against conventions. It is also a revolt against all such human traditions, all such conventions and traditions which hamper human liberty. So, dear students, existentialism is in a way the assertion of freedom, the assertion of human liberty. I personally look at existentialism as a belief in the essential melancholia of man. Melancholia, I hope you understand. So I look at the philosophy of existentialism as a sort of a belief in the essential melancholia of man. Dear students, I look at it as a creed that refers to the inevitable existence of suffering and misery. I repeat it once again, that existentialism is a sort of a creed that refers to the essential and inevitable existence of suffering and misery in the life of man. Dear students, I also look at existentialism as a sort of a rebellion against the religious aspect of life, against the moral aspect of life, a sort of a rebellion against the political aspect of life, against the legal and against the ethical and against the economic aspect of life. So listen to me carefully, that existentialism is a rebellion against the religious, moral, political, legal, ethical, and economic, as these conventions ignore human existence. I hope you will agree with me that when we try to look at the religious conventions, religion become more important than the man, than the individual. When you look at the moral conventions, when you look at the political conventions, when you look at the legal conventions, when you look at the ethical conventions, and similarly when you look at the economic conventions, these than the individual man. These conventions ignore human existence, whereas existentialism asserts the existence of man. These human conventions which I was referring to, the conventions like religion, morality, politics, legal law, ethics, economics, all these conventions, they obstruct individuality. I hope you will agree with me that all these traditions, all the religion, morality, politics, law, ethics, economics, etc., they actually obstruct individuality. They actually hamper our human freedom. They actually damage our human rights. Whereas existentialism advocates about man as man. It talks about the philosophy of the existence of man as man with a capital M, as I say time and again. Man, the individual. है ना? So existentialism advocates the existence of man as man, with no external barrier, with no convention, with no tradition of religion, mythology, law, and what you can say, morality and ethics and economics, etc., etc. Existentialism, individual man. It talks about the very existence of man as man itself, with all its freedom, with all its individuality, and with all its rights. So existentialism, I believe, my dear students, was the first human rights movement. It was the first movement for human freedom. Dear students, you know, if you have read the history of, you know that it was in fashion, it was in vogue in the second half of, or rather towards the end part of the first half of the previous century and the second half of the previous century. More specifically, when you look at the post-World War II scenario and all those devastations that happened because of World War in Europe, I hope you are aware about all these things. So existentialism has been in fashion, existentialism has been in vogue in that post-Second World War scenario. That you are able to recall some of the prominent names of existentialism. I hope that you are able to recall some of the prominent philosophers that are associated with this philosophy of existentialism. I am just trying to remind you those names with the belief that you already know these names. For example, Kierkegaard is a big name with regard to the post-Second World War emphasis on is in existentialism. Gabriel Marcel is another very important name. You know, you have heard this name, a very prominent philosopher and a very prominent European writer, right? So Jean-Paul Sartre, and yes, of course, that very famous Albert Camus. So look here and look at them as the chief exponents of existentialism. I repeat the names once again: Kierkegaard, Gabriel Marcel, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Albert Camus. And request you and suggest you and assert you to collect informations from different sources, either internet or published sources, about these philosophers like Kierkegaard, like Gabriel Marcel, like Jean-Paul Sartre, like Albert Camus, as the chief exponents of existentialism. You should look at their contribution also. Dear students, you know that this Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher. He raised his voice against materialism, his voice against European materialism, Western materialism that we call as. He raised his voice against industrial revolution and all that had happened because of the industrial revolution in Europe. He raised his voice against scientific researches and scientific developments and the culture of machine. Look here, the way these things played havoc with the existence of man. I mean, all those industrial growth and scientific development and researches, all that culture of dominance of the culture of machine, which we look as Western European materialism. Kierkegaard looks at these things in a very bad light. he basically raises his voice against all these things. He looks at these things as modern evils, and he raises his voice against these modern evils. Dear students, according to Kierkegaard, these modern evils of Western materialism, industrialization, and the Industrial Revolution, all these progress of science and all this culture of machine, etc. According to Kierkegaard, these were the things that basically haunted human existence. These were the things that basically darkened human existence. So Kierkegaard said that human existence is becoming valueless because of these things. Kierkegaard was of the opinion that human existence is becoming valueless in the rat race of materialism, and human is valueless according to Kierkegaard because of this scientific development. So dear students, Kierkegaard propagated the philosophy of existentialism. Kierkegaard talked about the philosophy of existentialism, and this philosophy of existentialism, as propagated by Kierkegaard, was against the philosophy of idealism by Hegel. I hope you have heard the name of this and great economist of the world, Hegel, Hegel. And this Hegel had propounded the philosophy of idealism. And my dear students, this philosophy of existentialism, as propagated by Kierkegaard, was in contradiction, was against the philosophy of Hegel's philosophy of idealism. Now, this Hegel's philosophy of idealism, real is rational and the rational is real. This is what Hegel believed in his philosophy of idealism, that the real is rational and the rational is real. But Kierkegaard rejected all this idea, and he says that because of this philosophy of idealism, we are basically ignoring human freedom. We are basically ignoring human rights. We are basically ignoring the very existence of the individual. Now, philosopher whom you have heard time and again is Friedrich Nietzsche, right? This great German philosopher opposed the idea of moral and social barriers. And he, that is Friedrich Nietzsche, said that the social and moral values belittle human existence. And we are too much involved in these social and moral kind of thing of life, and these social and moral human existence. So dear students, according to Nietzsche, you know, I have said this to you earlier also, you can recall that it was Nietzsche who gave the idea about the death of God. So according to Nietzsche, God is dead and man is living in a godless universe. And man living in this godless universe is all helpless, is all alone. And he has to face the realities and the harsh realities of life. Man knows that he will not succeed against these forces, but still he struggles. This is existentialism, do remember. We know that we are basically struggling very uselessly. We know that we will not survive this struggle. We will not face these human sufferings and human miseries, and the ultimate result will be the ultimate result will be a failure. The ultimate result will be a failure. We will succumb to human miseries. We will succumb to human sufferings. But knowing this, we face, we struggle. Knowing the outcome and the result, we face, we struggle, and we put up a brave fight, right? So, dear students, the existentialist philosophers rejected the idea of medievalism. And what was the idea of medievalism? I hope you know, I hope you understand that in the medieval approach of life, conventions were more important. In the medieval approach to life, institution, organization, sansthan, system was more important. Conventions were more important. Traditions were more important. Right? In the medieval approach to life, man was discarded because of his transitoriness. It was said that man is basically transitory. Man is basically man's existence is basically transitory. And in the whole scheme of life, man is almost like nothing. Philosophy towards life, religion was more important than man or than the individual. Morality was more important. System was more important, as I said. Convention was more important, as I said. Tradition was more important, as I said. Right? Ethics was more important, as I said. Right? So medieval approach was like this, and man was subsidiary to these things. Man was secondary to these things. Man was of its because of his transitoriness of life. But when we look at the 20th century existentialist philosophers, they asserted the rights of man. Actually, when you study Renaissance, you will find an emphasis on man in the Renaissance period itself. When you look at Renaissance and its humanism, you will find that Renaissance and its humanism rejected the medieval idea of institution, organization, sanstha was more important, system was more important, etc., etc. Man is more important, the individual freedom is more important. Now, I hope you are more able to understand this in these present circumstances of Corona and COVID-19 and what is happening around us in the whole world, and more especially what is happening around us in our own country, in which the life of individual man has become valueless. The life of the individual has become neglected. Right? So Renaissance for the first time, and then in the 20th century, they were our existentialist philosophers who emphasized the existence of man as the more important thing. That it is the man, it is the M in man that must be given the importance. And it is that I in the individual is more important than any religion, than any politics, than any system, than any tradition, than any custom. You must have heard me in my classes listening to me that if man is not there, what you will do with your religion? If man is not system, if man is not there, if I will not survive, if I the individual, the I of the individual is not there, what you will do with your customs and traditions and religion and ethics and morality and politics and economics? So that's why Renaissance humanism first, and then our existentialist philosophers in the 20th century rejected the medieval approach, which talked about the transitoriness of man, which talked about the nothingness of man. And this existentialism, and as I said and I repeat it again, existentialism which talks about man as man, man as it exists. So the existentialist philosophers say that man is because man exists. Look here and listen to me very carefully. This is a very important sentence, and this is the thrust sentence. This is the key sentence of the philosophy of existentialism. Man exists, and you, my dear ruler of the worlds, have to give importance to this man with a capital M. Have to give this importance to the individual I. Right. So the existentialist philosophers, they give more importance to man in comparison to the rules, in comparison to the regulations, in comparison to the laws, in comparison to the principles, in comparison to the values, in comparison to the conventions, in comparison to the traditions, etc., etc., and etc. You must have heard me saying this every time, that the religion exists because I exist. If I will not exist, if man will not exist, no religion will exist. So the religion is because of man. Man is not because of religion. Man is not because of any political system. Man is not because of any political party. Man is not because of any philosophical ideology. Man is not because of any faith and custom and tradition, etc. All those customs, traditions, faith, political party, political ideology, right, political system, economic system, trade, commerce, even. So, according to our existentialist philosophers, man's existence is important. Then the existentialist philosophers say, look here, now I'm turning the point. Now we are turning the situation. The existentialist philosophers are able to see that man's existence is miserable in this universe. Man's existence is horrible in this world. It is hostile to man. This world is hostile to man and his existence. The existentialist philosophers realized that man is lonely and alienated in this planet Earth. The existentialist philosophers realized, I hope you are more able to understand these things in these present COVID-19 situations. The existentialist philosophers realized that the existence of man is more lonely and alienated in this universe. Dear students, the desire for happiness is a myth. Listen to me, and listen to me very carefully. And I'm saying this with all responsibility. Time and again, आपको कभी लगता होगा, आपको कभी ये सवाल दिखता होगा कि यही सर इतने सीरियस क्यों दिखते हैं, यही सर हमेशा मुंह क्यों गिराया रहता है, यही सर ठीक से हंसते क्यों नहीं है. It's not because of Yahya sir. It's not about one individual man. It's not about me only. It is a normal human tendency. It's a normal human characteristic. We know and it's a myth. And there is no escape from human sufferings. Man is born to suffer. The thing is that he has to suffer bravely. He has to put up a fight, knowing fully well that he's going to lose this fight. He knows the result, my dear friends. Understand, Shreya Guha, you can understand this. He knows the result. आप समझ पाए मेरी इस बात को अभी? कुछ समझ पाए? We know the result, we know the outcome, we know the output. But knowing the output, we fight. We put up a brave fight. We have to. So man is born to suffer. He should suffer ungrudgingly. Or else he should escape, he should kill himself. If he is not ready to suffer grudgingly, then he should escape. He should commit suicide. I hope you are able to recollect this with reference to waiting for Godot. Man has to suffer. He has to face his suffering ungrudgingly. He has to put up a brave fight. He has to wait. He knows that Godot will not come even tomorrow. There will be no tomorrow, in fact. There's nothing like tomorrow, in fact, actually, if you have studied time and the Einstein's concept of time. There's nothing like tomorrow. And study Stephen Hawkins. So we know that Godot will not come. We know that Godot will never come. But in spite of this, we have to wait for Godot. We have to face. We have to suffer. We have to wait ungrudgingly, or else we have to escape. We should kill ourselves. Now, moving ahead, my dear friend, the social, economic, scientific, philosophical, and religious development of man cannot improve our situation. And this is, once again, I am saying with all sincerity. These are the aspects of mankind. Now, we have social aspect, we have economic aspect, we have industrial aspect, we have scientific aspect, we have philosophical aspect, we have religious aspect. These are the several aspects of our life. I hope you are able to understand that the social, economic, industrial, scientific, religious development of man cannot improve our real condition. So whatever progress you can make in the name of scientific development and economic development and industrial development and economic development, whatever progress you would like to make in the field of religion and philosophy, whatever development you would like to make in the field of in your social existence, in your social life, in your political existence, in your economic existence, in your scientific existence, in your intellectual existence, in your professional existence. So whatever progress you make, all these social, economic, industrial, scientific, philosophical, religious, political development of man cannot improve the real condition of man, cannot satisfy man completely, cannot satisfy him fully. Hence, my dear friends, all efforts that we make to ameliorate our conditions, look here, all our efforts that we make conditions, all efforts to ameliorate man's conditions are confusing and useless. Useless. Listen to me. All the efforts that I make, or that you make, or that together we make to ameliorate our condition are useless efforts, my dear friends. They are very confusing efforts, my dear friends. Right? And listen, these efforts basically lessen your freedom. All these efforts, that economic development, scientific development, materialistic development, all those efforts that you make to ameliorate your condition, to change your condition, are useless, are confusing, number one, and they also lessen your freedom. So any effort to ameliorate human condition is, number one, confusing, number two, useless, and they only decrease, they only lessen human freedom. And listen, all reforms are useless. एक साल से सोए हुए थे, है ना, और सडनली ऐलान किया कि 111 ऑक्सीजन प्लांट लगाएंगे और 151 ऑक्सीजन प्लांट लगाएंगे. And from the last 1 year, we were making the largest cricket stadium of the world. Instead of making a hospital, the largest hospital of the world, which we require, we actually require one largest hospital of the world in every city of this country. And we were making the largest cricket a game, cricket, which has been played by only a few nations of the world. 8 to 10 nations of the world play cricket. And we were making the world's greatest cricket stadium instead of making world's greatest hospital. So all those reforms that you try to make, they are futile, they are useless. All those philosophies that you try to create, all those isms, I hope you understand isms, right? Falaism, yeism, woism. So all those isms, all those philosophies, all those reforms, all those efforts, that all those systems, so-called under bracket, that you try to create around you, all those orders and all those order and organization and all those setups that you want to create, they're not here to lessen your suffering. They're not here to lessen your suffering. So, dear students, the existentialist philosophers believe that human life is absurd. A very prominent and a very strong belief of the existentialists, that human life is absurd. According to those existentialist philosophers, man is an isolated being. This has already been said earlier, time and again, several times by me in my classes, that we are by nature an isolated creature. So maybe that I am living with my parents, and I am living with my family, and that I am living with my friends, and that I am living with my neighborhood, and that I am living with my workplace. The fact of the matter is that I am the lonely figure. So the existentialist philosophers believe that man is an isolated being who can cast ignominiously into an alienated universe. We have been sent to this universe, we have been thrown upon this universe, or we have been thrusted upon this universe, which is basically not favorable for us, rather very hostile for us, rather very alienated for us. You know? So we basically move from nothingness to nothingness. I hope you can recall one of my class where I said that to another. So whether it is the nothingness of the mother's womb and moving to the nothingness of death. So we move from one zero to another. In a world which is a waste. Look here. We move from nothingness to nothingness in a world which is a waste. In a world which is anguished. And in a world which is absurd. Now, my dear students, very quickly, to wrap up my point, look at these aspects and aspects with reference to Waiting for Godot. I hope you will agree with me that Waiting for Godot basically represents the stagnation of life. This is for the first time I'm saying to you in my class that Waiting for Godot as a play represents a stagnation. It represents a stagnation of life. Look at your COVID-19 situation around, right? So Waiting for Godot does not relate to any human action. Look here, nothing happens in the play, है ना? So Waiting for Godot as a play does not relate to any human action. It does not ascribe to any human action. And look here, it describes man deprived of history. Can you remember Estragon and Vladimir? They don't know anything about themselves. They were rootless beings. They were deprived of their history. So Waiting for Godot basically presents man, or rather describes man being deprived of its root, being deprived of its history. Dear students, the characters in Waiting for Godot are pulled out of the world. They no longer have anything to do with their world. And the world seems empty for them. I hope you can remember this, that the world seems appears, the world becomes empty for them. Dear students, the two tramps are alive in the play. Recall, let us recall. The two tramps are alive in the play. But I hope you will agree that they are not living in a world. They are not living in a world. Right? And I hope you will also agree that the same Vladimir and Estragon-like situation is there with millions. Listen to me very, very carefully, and I repeat this aspect, that the two tramps, Estragon and Vladimir, are alive in the play, but they are not living in a world. And I hope you will be able to understand that you will find people like millions of people like Estragon and Vladimir around us. In today's world, millions of people feel in a world in which they have no meaning. In today's world, millions of people feel that they are living in a world in which they have no importance. Millions of people in today's world know and understand that they are living in a world in which they do not act, but they are acted upon. You know? They do not act, but rather they are acted upon. Millions of people in this world, millions of people in this universe are able to understand this situation more nowadays. And dear students, the two tramps in the play, Vladimir and Estragon, look here, and I hope you will surely agree with me that in spite of their inaction, in spite of their pointlessness, they want to go on, they want to live. They know that they are inactive, they have nothing to do. They know that they are passive, Nishkriya. You must have read active and passive voice in your grammar class in your school. The passive subject or the subject of a passive voice sentence is inactive and it gets action acted upon it. Right? Right? So the later is written, it's in which the act of writing is not done by the later, but the later is being written. So we have millions and millions of people around us in this world who know that they are not acting. Rather, they are being acted upon. They know that they are inactive. They understand their inaction. They understand their nothingness. They understand their pointlessness. Like Vladimir and Estragon understand their pointlessness, their inaction. So dear students, what I was saying is that the two tramps, Vladimir and Estragon, in spite of their inaction, in spite of their pointlessness, they still want to go on. They still can wait for Godot once again tomorrow. Although they know that tomorrow never comes. They know that Godot never comes. But still they want to go on. So millions of people in today's world who do not give up, they are still trying for oxygen cylinders. They are still trying for beds. They know that they cannot afford the private hospital beds. They know that they cannot face the mafia of the medicine world. But it's still millions and millions of people in today's world, they are still trying. They know that their life has become pointless. But they have to do, or else they have to escape and they have to commit suicide, which existentialism does not talk about. So they have to face. Knowing fully well the result, they have to face. They have to put up a brave fight. So the two tramps, my dear, now listen to me. Throughout my discussion of the play, you must have thought that this is a very pessimistic play. आज आपको optimistic a play it is. They have to fight. They have to go on, knowing fully well that tomorrow also Godot will not come and he will send a messenger once again. As God was continuously not coming to this world, sending his messengers one after another. So those two tramps know that God will not come even tomorrow also, and he will send the third messenger in third act, if the third act happens. But it will come back tomorrow, and do remind me to come with a better with a better equipment, so that if Godot does not come tomorrow, we will commit suicide. But they never commit suicide, neither in the first act nor in the second act. They will not commit suicide even if even there would have been a third act and a fourth act and the fifth act of the play. And they will keep on going, go on and on, waiting for Godot throughout the play. So the two tramps keep reminding each other that they are waiting. It shows that they are actually waiting for nothing. They are, my dear students, exposed to their daily continuation of existence. The fact of the matter is this: सुबह उठना है, फिर वही ब्रश करना है, फिर वही डबल रोटी लेकर के आना है फुटपाथ पर से जाकर के. So it shows that they were actually waiting for nothing. They were exposed to their daily continuation of existence. They cannot keep help concluding that they must be waiting. They must wait. They have to. So dear students, it is meaningless to ask who and what Godot is. Look here. In our previous video, in our previous lecture, I was trying to solve the mystery of Godot. I was trying to solve the enigma of Godot. The fact of the matter is, my dear students, that it is meaningless. It is useless to solve that mystery and puzzle of Godot and God and whatever it is. It is meaningless to ask who and what Godot is. Godot is nothing. Godot is just a dil ke behlane ko ghalib ye khayal acha hai. Godot is just a name given to the fact that life is wrongly interpreted. Godot is just a name given to a fact that life is wrongly interpreted to mean waiting. What appears to be, look, and we'll be concluding, what appears to be the positive attitude of the tramps, Estragon and Vladimir, actually amounts to double negation. You know, you will agree with mathematics. Minus minus is equal to plus. Yes. So double negative. Negative is equal to a positive. So what appears to be a positive attitude of the tramps in the play is actually amounting to double negation. And look here, what is this double negation? Look at this, and you will find I will find this double negation in the life of all of us. What is this double negation? One, the existence is pointless. Look here. One, the existence is pointless. Two, that they are incapable of recognizing the pointlessness. That they are, we are, you are, all of us are incapable of recognizing the pointlessness of our existence. So I repeat that what appears to be the positive attitude play is actually amounting to double negation. One, their existence is pointless, and two, that they are incapable of recognizing the pointlessness of their existence. Dear students, to end my lecture today, I would like to drag your attention towards the ineffectiveness of language once again. I had also talked about this, referred about this earlier also again. that in an existential play, like Waiting for Godot here, for example, language is an ineffective means of communication. Look here, listen to me, and I say this with all my responsibility, that language is an ineffective means of communication. You search for an oxygen cylinder, you get it by some help. Are you able to express the real gratitude that you can feel for that person who arranged for that oxygen cylinder? Is your language capable of expressing that gratitude? No, not at all. Reverse the situation. You are desperately searching for an oxygen cylinder. You did not get one and you lose your dear one. Can you express your loss through the help of your language? So language, my dear friend, in existentialism, in any existentialist play, in Waiting for Godot, is an ineffective means. Language fails to communicate, dear students. Language fails to communicate in Waiting for Godot. I hope you can remember. The dramatist, Beckett, does not find any suitable means of communication in Waiting for Godot. So hence he plays with the words in that play. Can you remember? Incomplete sentences, non-grammatical sentences, dots, dashes, full stops, incomplete sentences, and what not. So language, dear students, language fails to communicate in Waiting. Beckett does not find a suitable, Beckett does not find a befitting means of communication, and that is why he devalues language in Waiting for Godot. Beckett has devalued language in Waiting for Godot. Beckett devalues language as a vehicle of conceptual thought, as an instrument of ready-made answers to the problems of human conditions. I may also note down, we together may note down at least 10 different modes of language failure in Waiting for Godot. At least 10 or even more breakdowns of language in Waiting for Godot. At least 10 or more disintegrations of language in Waiting for Godot. I hope you will agree that these breakdowns of language in Waiting for Godot range from simple misunderstandings to monologues. And can you recall these things? The inability of the characters to communicate. You can recall those cliches that have been used in the play, repetitions that have been used in the play, the characters' inability and the writer's inability to find the right word, to find the correct word. And notice the telegraphic style of language. Notice the incomplete style of the non-grammatical style of language. Notice the in Waiting for Godot, right? Notice that 2.5 pages of Lucky's discourse turning into no meaning. I hope I have told you that more than 2.5 pages of Lucky's discourse and it is all nonsense. So that chaotic, nonsensical discourse of Lucky turning into a nonsensical discourse. Can you remember the dropping of the punctuation marks? I mean, a lot of punctuation drops have also been used in Waiting for Godot, the play. So dear students, sounds of language that has been witnessed by us in Waiting for Godot is an indication, dear students, that language has lost its function around us. Language has lost its function as a means of communication. It is no more a means of communication, maaf kijiyega. The treatment of time, you can also recall this, the way time has been treated in this play, in Waiting for Godot. So the treatment of time in Waiting for Godot existentialistic. I mean, a lot of existentialistic principle is practiced by Beckett with regard to the treatment of time in the play. So the distinction between clock time and eternal time. I hope I have made this difference between clock time and the eternal time that is there in the play. I must have told you that that drama of slicing time according to physics, right? Now it is physics which divides time into clock time now. And that drama of dividing time by grammar into past, present, and future, it is all a drama, my dear friend. Time cannot be sliced in this manner. So the distinction between clock time and eternal time is a major theme in the play. We have talked about this earlier in our earlier classes also. So let's recall this. You should work upon all these aspects of time. And time and again, I have asserted you, I have told you to work upon the concept of the philosophy of time. So dear students, I mean, in the exercise of waiting in the play, in the waiting, the passage of time is not absolute. Look here, the passage of time is not absolute, it is relative. This I have told you earlier also, that time is not absolute. Time cannot be looked in past, present, and future, and time cannot be looked at 1.5 p.m. So it is 1.05 a.m. or 1.05 p.m. You cannot do all these exercises, my dear friends. These are so time is basically relative. Time depends upon one's mental condition. Try to understand this. Time is not absolute. Time is relative. I hope some of you have read the theory of relativity. So those who have read the theory of relativity will be able to understand this concept of relativity of time. So it is relative to one's mental condition. So the wait becomes doubts about time make the two tramps, Vladimir and Estragon, doubt their existence and doubt their own identity. Let us recall, if what one tramp claims to be the past, the same past is doubted by the other. Are you sure? Did we really come yesterday? Is it the same place that we come yesterday? Can you recall all these kind of situations in the place? Yes, you can, of course. So what one tramp claims to be the past, the same has, the place has been objected. Their own identity has been objected. They are doubtful about Pozo's existence. They are doubtful about even their own existence. So their own identity, their own existence in time is also open to question. So one day seems to have elapsed between the first act and the second act, right? I hope you can remember. We are told that one day passes between one act and second act. So one day seems to have the second act. Yet, can you remember that one of the two tramps says, were we here yesterday? Is it the same place where we were yesterday? And was it really yesterday? Was it Monday? Why not Tuesday? Can you recall all these situations? So one day seems to have elapsed between the first act and the second act. Yet it becomes extremely difficult for the two tramps to connect their day with their previous day, with their today, etc., etc. So, dear students, in the play, I mean in Waiting for Godot, we find existential undertones, and there is sufficient resemblance between the standpoint of Beckett and the standpoint of our existentialist philosophers. You can find the similarities there between the existentialist philosophers and the approach of Samuel Beckett. So the play deals with the clock time. The play also deals the protagonists, Vladimir and Estragon, are placed in a very unhappy situation. The two tramps, Vladimir and Estragon, produce a sense of baffled helplessness, you can remember. And they basically make us understand our helplessness. Life has been shown to us as a big waste in the play. Life has been shown to us as a big waste in the play. Don't you think that life has been waste in this COVID-19 situation? The condition of the two tramps in the play is hopeless, as Estragon suddenly offers the suggestion, let's hang ourselves immediately. So the ordeal of waiting for an enigma named Godot is in itself tragic. The ordeal of waiting is in itself very tragic. The two tramps are waiting. We know this, we understand this, and even we, you and I together, are waiting with no purpose at all. The boy who brings the message, the messenger boy of Act 1, the messenger boy of Act 2. So the boy who brings the message of Godot, even that boy holds a very faint hope. Even that boy who appears as messenger telling that Godot will not come today, he will surely come tomorrow. So even that boy holds about the coming of Godot the next day. So 151 oxygen plants in the next 10 days. But we can see that this is not going to be fulfilled. We can see that this is Godot will never come. So every time and again we will be continuously be fooled till our last day comes. You must have noticed that I was a bit angry today. The reason of my anger. You must have been feeling the same kind of frustration and the same kind of anger inside you. So with this, I stop this discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.